Welcome, Shaunie, and thank you for joining me today. Before I get started, I want to quickly introduce you. For those watching and listening in, Shaunie is the Cloud Accounting Manager at Mazars in Australia. Shaunie is the driving force of Mazars Cloud Accounting Solutions practice and winner of 2 awards at the Accountants Daily 30 Under 30, and began her career at 2014 or in 2014 at Mazars UK, as you might hear in a moment, with a focus on management accounting, and transferred to Sydney in 2018, where her role has further developed towards bespoke app advisory, process improvement, and virtual CFO services. So Shaunie, that's really impressive. I love it, and I can't wait to learn more. Welcome, and let's start with your career. How did you end up in Australia from the UK all those years ago?
Yeah, so well, I already knew that I wanted to work abroad. I wanted to experience working overseas. You know, from the UK, I come from a regional area, like I'm a country bumpkin, and I love traveling. So I was like, you know, I want to work somewhere where I can go abroad and see the world.
Yes.
So because of that, that's one of the reasons why I joined Mazars. So Mazars being an integrated global partnership, you know, in place in over 91 countries. So I took the job with Mazars hoping that I'd get some opportunity for some international travel. So the opportunity came up to do a secondment to Australia. And one of the reasons I really wanted to work in Australia was partly because the weather. The weather's obviously a lot better than it is in the UK.
Yes.
But also I see Australia as being one of the areas where a lot of the innovation is coming from. You know, you've got Xero itself came out of New Zealand. A lot of the apps are starting from Australia and New Zealand, and I find Australians are a lot less resistant to change, and really are the driving force in a lot of this technology and the adoption of technology. So I saw it as a really, really great opportunity to be involved in that.
Excellent. You can, what you're saying about Australians adapting to change is pretty amazing. You know, using Xero since 2009 here myself in Australia, we've tried to, you know, get into the UK market over so many years, and it's only just now in the last few years that they've truly, you know, obviously Xero's been growing there, but it took a lot longer than it did in Australia for the UK to really get onto it. So yeah. Awesome. Very good. Okay. So obviously with your role as the cloud in cloud accounting solutions, you're obviously an accountant. What skills have been essential to you during your career as you've grown from, you know, where you know, I'm assuming you just started as an assistant accountant in Mazars? Like what's your journey been from when you started to now what you're doing currently?
Yeah. So I started at Mazars as a graduate. So prior to that, my only experience had actually been in commercial. So during my degree, I actually did a work placement year. So I spent 14 months working in what is the Southern Cooperative. So think of your Coles, your Woolies, it's a food chain.
Yep.
So I'd worked for that in 14 months in their retail finance reporting team.
Okay.
So from that, while I was there, I actually implemented a new reporting system for them and trained all of their heads of departments and actually rolled it out. So that spurred on for me the drive towards management accounting, the business side of things and operations, and also tech and innovation. So following on from that, I then took on a graduate role at Mazars, and that was where I really locked in kind of my foundation knowledge of accounting. So I think it's so important to make sure you have that strong foundation, so you really do understand, you know, the procedures, the processes, and the principles behind accounting. And then on top of that, I think for me, it was definitely problem-solving skills. You know, when you're dealing more with the business owners and looking into their operational side, you need to be able to problem solve. You know, find the inefficiencies of what's not working and how can you improve those. I think also leading into that is commercial acumen. I think it's really important to make sure that you really understand all of the business from the bottom of how do they run, how do they actually work operationally, and then how does that then lead into the numbers. Having that understanding from end to end can really help you become a stronger advisor. So it's not just understanding the numbers, it's not just being a number cruncher, it's really understanding it all throughout.
Yes. That's the best list of skills for a truly practical accountant I've ever heard. I don't know about these days, but certainly when I went to uni, and I think you wouldn't have been too far behind me, but they didn't teach us any of this stuff in our accounting degree. Would that be fair to say? They don't teach us problem solving skills and business operations. You just get the numbers, and yes, you know how to run certain reports, but they're not always necessarily practical reports, or if they are, they're so much more overcomplicated than they need to be. Actually truly understanding what a business owner wants and how they get that data into their system is the most valuable skill to any true advisor, like you just said. So yeah, awesome. That's really, really good. Okay. How would you say is assuming that you started obviously from, very core skills with the retail accounting reporting focus for management accounting, and then obviously coming into Mazars with still that sort of business services focus initially, how did you learn those skills? Like, is it just on the job? You just learned because, because of the people that you're working around? How would you say that you learned those skills? Because there's no course to just get them straight off the bat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of it's trial and error. I think sometimes as painful as it can be to be thrown in at the deep end, sometimes that's really where you can flourish your skills. Yes. I've been really lucky to have some really great managers and mentors over the years. And yeah, all of them have had that approach of just throw you at it. Yes. But it really teaches you to problem solve for yourself. So rather than just following a process and doing exactly what somebody's told you to do, it teaches you to work it out for yourself. Yes. And I think that's a really important skill to learn. Yes. And I think for me also, because I was a bit of a natural problem solver, it kind of meant that all the messy jobs would come to me anyway. It was like, oh, that's a messy one. Shaunie can do that.
Yes. Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah. So I think definitely getting given the right kind of work that can really hone in on those skills helps you to develop them further. But yeah, definitely having strong mentors. And not just when it's your direct managers. It can be, reaching out to your peers across the network. I mean, especially something I found so amazing about Australia is how everybody is so willing to share and so willing to help each other. Yes. And I've really grown out like quite a strong network since I've been here. And just, that peer-to-peer learning and sharing of skills and knowledge and experience, I think is really important to help you to also develop as an individual.
Yes. How did you, I was in a very similar situation as well, give Jeri all the messy jobs and, all the challenging ones. All right, I go and ask for more challenging jobs if you needed it. And I had a good mentor back in KPMG years ago that sort of, I guess, built my confidence early on to do those things because I enjoyed taking on the challenge. What would be your advice to people that might be thinking, oh, that sounds really good, but they're afraid to do it? How do you build your confidence in those areas and have the confidence to ask for the more challenging jobs? Maybe it comes naturally, but if it doesn't, what advice would you have for those people?
I think in terms of growing the confidence, one thing to think about is we're not surgeons. Like, if we do something wrong, nobody's going to die. Like, yes,
might feel like it sometimes.
But most of the things that we do can be fixed. Don't be scared of making a mistake or doing something wrong, because it can be corrected. Most of what you can do, obviously, as long as you've done what you've done in a methodical way so that you can trace it back if something has not quite gone to plan, it can be corrected. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to have a go, maybe get it wrong. As long as you have good people around you who will help support you, then they'll be there to, check what you've done, make sure that nothing's gone wrong. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to get hurt. So
very good advice.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. So what would, with your different clients that you work with, obviously, from my focus, our business is now very much focused on product-based businesses. So I'm more interested in, there's a lot of businesses out there or conversations people have, and it's all about helping the service-based clients. Not many people talk about the product-based clients. Tell me a bit about your biggest challenge working with product-based clients and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. So what I found with the product-based clients is what's so important is they have that accurate, efficient inventory management. And as part of that was also what a lot of clients were struggling with tracking those accurate landed costs to make sure that actual inventory valuation was correct. You know, when you've got customers that are importing goods to Australia from Europe, you know, their freight costs, their input duty, those are quite high. So it's actually got quite a large effect on their inventory values. And so they need to make sure that they're tracking that efficiently. And so what we found with the clients like that is that it was so important that we found for them a system that would work for their business, because these, you know, we're saying product businesses as if they're just like one small category, but that can be so many different things depending on the product that they're selling and whether are they manufacturing it, you know, are they buying it in as a finished good. There's so many different things to consider. This was actually why we ended up having the strategic partnership with Which Add-on, now WAOConnect. We had that strategic partnership so that we could work with experts in inventory to make sure that our clients had the most suitable solution for their needs. Because there's so many different options out there in terms of software to try and solve this one problem, that, you know, if a client tried to just solve that by themselves and just pick the one that seems to be the most popular in the market, it might not be suitable for them, or it might be that it's not set up efficiently, and that's just going to cause some big headaches later down the line.
Yeah, definitely. There's certainly not one size fits all when it comes to inventory management solutions, as we both know. That's now something that obviously affect all of our product-based businesses around the world, well, all businesses, I would say, but especially product-based businesses with getting stock on time and all those types of things. You know, we saw it firsthand how it affected our businesses with supply chain times and all of those issues, as positively and negatively. So I'm talking about COVID now. Obviously, product-based businesses had supply problems getting stock from overseas, and but then at the same time, we saw a massive growth in e-commerce. So we even had one client that had estimate to grow from 15,000 orders a month to 25,000 e-commerce orders per month over the next 2 years. And when COVID hit, they suddenly went to 50,000 orders per month, you know, within a few months of having a system. So, you know, there was positive and negative impacts we saw for clients, obviously. What impact did COVID have for you guys, you know, in your business and for your clients?
Yeah. So what we found with the impact of COVID is that it really reduced that resistance to change that a lot of businesses were feeling around technology. So because a lot of businesses suddenly have to start working from home, they had to move away from those paper-based processes. You know, those that were really comfortable with their traditional methods found that it didn't work anymore, and they needed to change, and they needed to change quickly. So we found that a lot of businesses suddenly saw the light. They saw the light that technology was the way forward. And so many of our clients started reaching out to us saying, what do I do? How do I do this? How do I now work from home and keep my business working effectively? And that's continued right through. So now that people are starting to return to the offices, you know, starting to return to face-to-face working methods, they now understand that technology isn't a threat. It's not something scary. It's something that can make their lives easier and make their businesses more efficient. We also noticed that with a lot of clients, they had to pivot very quickly in terms of the services or products that they were offering and the methods in which they were offering them. And so, yeah, we've seen a huge uptake from our clients in wanting to expand their ecosystems and actually put all of these procedures and software in place to help them to grow their businesses further. We've also seen the importance of real-time reporting. So, you know, with a massive effect on their businesses and their cash flows, they now understand the need for the real timely and accurate information, not only for reporting on how the business is performing, but also for future forecasting.
Yes.
That's where we found a real uptake in our virtual CFO services that we offer. Because businesses now understand the value in having that accurate information and that real insight into their business so that they can plan to make sure that they're meeting their plans for growth.
Yes, it's never ceases to amaze me how many people, unless they have dedicated services like what you guys provide, truly don't even look at their reports. They have all this information, and you've really come full circle with what you were doing when you started to now providing real-time reporting and the same level of information that a big business requires. A lot of small businesses don't even realize that they can have that information real-time in a way that they can make informed decisions if they've got the right systems and the right people helping them deliver that and get those numbers. So tell us a bit more about what you do at Mazars currently. And you've mentioned, touched on your services, but give us a bit more about what your role is and also what the services Mazars offers overall.
Yeah. So I work as part of our accounting and outsourcing team. Mm-hmm. So as a whole, our service line, we offer that kind of outsourced back office function. So the back office finance function to clients. So that's everything from the bookkeeping, payroll, paying suppliers, accounts receivable management, debt collections, through to monthly management accounts. So we do all of those month-end adjustments, your accruals and prepayments, so that it's a real accurate picture of how the business has performed in that month. And then my specific role as part of that team in the cloud accounting solutions element is bespoke app advisory. So where I focus on bespoke is that, not no two clients are exactly the same. We don't believe in offering just a one size fits all approach. We make sure that make sure to have a deep understanding of the client's needs and their business to make sure that what we're recommending fits for their business. Because they need to make sure they've got quality information in, because rubbish in, rubbish out.
Yes.
So
yes.
It's really important to make sure that it's fitting their needs.
Yes. And when you're talking about the bespoke system apps, just to clarify for those that are from a pretty high, focused old school IT background, you're talking about providing a sort of tech stack of multiple existing cloud apps and picking which one of those cloud apps is most suitable for them, not actually building a custom bespoke app like an IT company would sell, where they'd actually build an app from scratch. You guys aren't doing that. You're picking from suitable apps in the cloud ecosystem. So can you just expand on that a bit more for those that need to know that? So
yeah. For example, so with the so Xero is one of the main solutions that our clients tend to be using, and their app ecosystem has got thousands and thousands of different apps available. So for anybody looking at it for the first time, it can be quite overwhelming that there's so many different options, and how do you really understand which ones are best suited? So if we just focus on one area, if we look at accounts payable, so with the accounts payable process, you've got a few different options. You've got HubDoc, you've got Dex, which was previously Receipt Bank, and you've got Lightyear. Now, all of these different apps have different strengths, different weaknesses, and they, depending on the business and their needs, different ones are best suitable. So we would help evaluate the needs of the client and find out what would be most suitable for them, and we'd make a recommendation based on that. So not only would we recommend that app as a standalone, what's best suitable, but then also how that information would flow. So how that information would flow into their accounting system, and then on from that, how does that affect their reporting? So we need to make sure that we understand all of the needs of the client, so that we know what's best suited solution for them, because you need to know what outputs are important to them to know what kind of inputs you need going in.
Definitely. And that's a perfect example with the accounts payable, because that can also then change, like the requirements can change based on other systems that they might have in place as well. So if, for example, they've got an inventory management system connected and there's already purchase orders and bills going into that inventory management system, then you may not use one of those systems because the information is coming from the inventory management system for all the stock related purchases, but then you still want one of those solutions for all of the non-stock related solutions. So it's obviously based on their requirements as well as also the systems they use. So it's not something that you can just make a decision from reading a website of what it might be, which is obviously what you guys provide, is that detailed analysis. Is it fair to say then, obviously you just mentioned those three solutions, and there is more, and obviously you would have picked the ones that you guys see fit most different clients, but I see a lot of accounting firms still even these days picking their app stack, and they'll have one accounts payable app that they use and one debt collection app that they use, etc. And yes, we all have our favorites, But as we say, both of us say, not one size fits all. Would it be fair to say that you don't just work with one provider within each because of that reason, that you want to have the full analysis across a number of different solutions? And did you used to subscribe to that idea, but then changed your mind over time? Like we see so many accountants still stuck with the one solution and then trying to make clients fit that. Tell me a bit about that sort of process.
Yeah. So if we take it back a few years as to how we started on this journey, at first, yes, we mainly stuck with one app. We made sure that we fully understood it, found all the clients that were suitable for it, suggested that they move on to it. But then we noticed that there were situations where that wasn't suitable. And then we made sure that we had a look at the entire app marketplace to find out what was best in class.
Yes.
And best in class it's never going to be just one in each category. There's a few. They have, as I said, they've got different strengths, different weaknesses.
Yes.
So for example, you've got Lightyear, which is very good with hospitality and very good with inventory because they take line item extraction, they've got price checking, and that's all functionality that something like Dext can't do. But then Dext is better suited to clients that don't need that kind of level of detail, and they just need a more simplified approach.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, we really identified that there's no point trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Yes.
And it's not the best for the clients just to try and push them down a particular path. And yeah, we decided to go against the grain and not stick with a set tech stack. And instead we have a few options that we that we have our preferred solutions within each area. And then for each of those, for every client, we will then evaluate that and recommend for them what we think is best suited. And as you touched on, it definitely depends on the other apps that are in their ecosystem as well, in terms of how those work together. And it might be that you use more than one. As you said with the example with the inventory, you're going to have some purchases will be going through your inventory software, whereas your non-stock purchases will be going through something potentially like Dext. So it's really important to understand, it's almost like a whole ecosystem view. You need to understand how everything works together.
Well, that touches more on obviously your other service you mentioned in the introduction was process improvement. So we've talked about the bespoke sort of a cloud and system analysis of helping them to decide which solution, and the virtual CFO services. With your process improvement, explain a little bit about the processes that you have in place to help understand the processes of the business, and what type of process improvements you're recommending or you see people needing to implement most, and what advice anyone listening could take, as there might be a pain point they have that you would obviously help with on a regular basis.
So obviously one of the most important parts of the service that we provide is actually the scoping part of the service. And that's really important to make sure that we understand the existing processes and flows of information that are in place. Understand, as I've touched on previously, the needs of the business in terms of what outputs do they need, what reporting do they need, and therefore what information do they need flowing in to be able to get those outputs. So as part of that scoping, we really take a deep dive to understand all of the nuances of that businesses. Where do they potentially have information bottlenecks? Where do they have those pain points? Understanding from their point of view what they think they need, and then actually applying that to what we determine that they need. Because quite often we'll find clients who come to us and they think they need one thing in particular. They'll be like, oh, I need a solution for this. And when we ask them more questions and find out more about the business as a whole, we find out that actually what they need is not what they thought they needed. And this is why, this whole scoping element of it is so important, to design out all of the processes from all the inputs to the outputs. And we'll often do it in a workflow form. So a lot of people quite like that visual, like visual understanding of what's going on in their business. And where the flows of information are. So it's not always that technology will be the solution to their problem. Sometimes it's just a change to their internal processes. And it's making sure that we understand the controls and important processes that they currently have in place, making sure that we maintain the controls that they need to have while also making all of their process more efficient.
Yes, I think something that you're obviously leading to there is the fact that we're really talking about the processes and the inputs within the operations side of their business, whether that's a product-based business or a service-based business. And I think as accountants, especially accountants starting out that are still doing accounting and doing tax returns and doing the day-to-day data crunching and maybe interested in cloud accounting and the systems area, is obviously we don't learn this type of work. We don't learn how to do a workflow map and use Lucid Charts or whichever system you're using back in early days in our accounting, or even in our roles in tax and in other places. So how did you learn how to do those workflows in that process? Obviously it's a natural way in which you think as a problem solver and just having a genuine interest in businesses. That's something I certainly struggled with. The whole workflow process, I struggled with using those apps, and I have a staff member that does it for me. I do know how to use them now, but tell us, like, going from using just our accounting brains to then applying it and being able to produce something to then share with clients, that visual representation. How did you go through that process? I struggled with it, and tell me a bit about your that's something that we don't do as accountants normally. Tell us about how you got into that and achieved it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about learning to be comfortable to ask why.
Mm-hmm.
As you touched on earlier, when you're doing an accounting degree, you're just learning the theories of everything. You're just told this is the way things are.
Yes.
And we're not necessarily taught to ask why.
Mm-hmm.
Question things. Why are they done that way? Why do they currently have the existing process that they have in place? Mm-hmm. And normally you'll discover that there's actually, as I've mentioned, there'll be an important control there, and that's why they're doing what they're doing, but they could be doing that a different way. And that's not always the way that people think about things and approach it. So I just think that's a really important tip to anybody, is to ask why. Why is it done that way? And think about the whole process from start to finish. Just give an example of that might be purchases. So as an accountant, always when we're thinking of purchases, all we're thinking about is, do we have the invoice and has it been paid? But if you think further back through that, think about why did they make that purchase, and how did they come to make that purchase? How did they determine that it was the right price for them, and how did they actually order that from the supplier? And if you keep following that process back, asking why and how, you might determine that they've actually got no purchase approvals in place, and anybody in the business can just buy anything. And then that instantly tells you that there's an issue with their controls. And so that's where you could recommend to a business that they put a purchase order process in place, so that they make sure that they've verified all of their purchases, and then also verifying that the price they get at the bill at the end of the day is the same as what they'd ordered it for. So the question of asking why just keeps leading you back and back and back until you find out the full picture.
That's amazing advice to take any accounting type brain and turn it into exactly what you're sharing is most valuable to a client, to then be able to truly help them. Why and how is exactly what we do when you're asking those questions. And I love it. That was perfect. That's a very good explanation. I've never thought of it that way. And it's something we do naturally, but for those that don't have that, how do you do it? How do you learn how to do that and become second nature? So that's perfect. Awesome. Okay, so tell me a sort of final question, and you may not have any tips left after these ones because they were so good after what you've already said, but let's go with it, and I'll see what you can come up with. What's your top 3 tips for accountants that are starting out like you and looking to get into a similar field of cloud accounting and systems and helping people like you do every day? What's your top 3 tips for them?
Yeah, okay. So some of these are a bit of a repeat of what I've already said, but to really hone in
on
the important tips. Definitely to find out, what do your clients actually need? Not just what they want, what do they need? Again, asking those questions, why, how, really drill down to what it is that they need, because so often it can be a miles away from what they think that they actually, what they're wanting. So that's one important one. Another would be, you don't need to be the expert in everything. So obviously it's important to, particularly in the app advisory space, keep researching, keep understanding what new features are coming out, what is the best in class today, because it might be what was the best in class yesterday. But when you're not an expert in something, recognize it, own it. Don't try to pretend to be an expert.
Yes.
And this leads back into our partnership again. Like inventory is so specialized that I knew I couldn't possibly be across all of the inventory applications while also doing my day job. And this is one of the reasons why we had the partnership with yourselves, because we're not going to pretend to be the expert. So when we do have those situations come up, we say to our clients, yeah, you know what, we know the perfect people to refer you to, and we're gonna work in collaboration. So we work together on our project, with you touching on the inventory side and us covering the accounting side, to make sure that the client gets the solution that they need, not just the solution that I could potentially provide on my own.
Yes. Awesome.
And then also leading on through that is make sure you have a strong network of peers in the industry. You know, it can be your colleagues in your own office, it can be your colleagues globally. So I'm regularly catching up with the other Mazars staff in the rest of Asia Pacific and my ex-colleagues in the UK. Just reach out, because everybody's happy to share. And if you have a problem, you can just reach out across your network and somebody will be able to give you some really sound advice. And another few places you can go is there's some really good Facebook forums in place. So you've got the Zero Masterminds forum on Facebook. You've also got the Zero Partners. So those obviously quite Zero specific ones, but they do talk about all the different apps that connect. And these apps also connect, you know, MYOB to NetSuite. And just asking a question out there. And you'll get the advice from people who are experienced, and it's really important to grow that network. Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. That's very, very good tips. Thank you. You make me feel old. I was started with Zero when there was only 30 apps on the Zero marketplace. I remember when it said one of 30. It's just a long, long time ago. So thank you so much, Shaunie. I really, really enjoyed you sharing your story and sharing your tips and tricks for the accountants that are, you know, in a similar place and want to get to where you are, and obviously sharing what Mazars does and what we do together as a partnership and the types of clients we help. So yeah, I could keep going, but let's leave it at that for now, and we can organize another chat another day about even more tips to share what, you know, your stories and what it is that you guys are doing with us and with other clients, and the real life examples which people can really draw from. So thank you so much. Lovely to chat to you today. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me.